Full Sail University. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but for obvious reasons, I wanted to wait until I had graduated with my degree and no longer had any official ties to the school before giving my full and honest opinion on my experience. At the same time, I figured it was only fair to you, the viewer, if I had fully gone through my program before I started firing off any half-baked opinions. Mainly because when I was first looking at enrolling at Full Sail, I spent weeks trying to find as many reviews and videos and testimonies as I could, terrified that I might be making a huge mistake, and there were plenty of people with big loud opinions that probably should have kept those opinions to themselves, to be honest. With that being said, my name is Steve Rolberg, and I am a recent graduate of Full Sail University's online digital cinematography Bachelors of Science, or simply DCBS. I started in July of 2023 and graduated on March 5th, 2026. Real quick, a little background on why I decided to go to Full Sail. I spent years bouncing around different industries trying to find my thing, but ultimately just was never happy. No matter what line of work I got into, and there were many, I never felt truly fulfilled. And after a while, that feeling would always become miserable. I'd always been a writer, but never had a good outlet to share my stories. So one day I decided I wanted to learn how to make them come to life myself without relying on someone else to match my vision. I spent a few years teaching myself basic filmmaking and production through good old YouTube University, and I learned a lot. In fact, I was very anti-film school or anti-college in general because of the wealth of information we have on the internet. However, I got to a point where I desperately needed some direction. I didn't have any filmmaker friends to make stuff with, and I was an overthinker to the point where I would never actually make anything myself. I would just learn a lot about it. I would plan, write, buy so much gear, set things up, but never actually finished anything I started. Obviously, here's how we get to Full Sail. Don't get me wrong, I did a lot of research on schools, but Full Sail had a few things going for it that appealed to me the most, which we'll get into throughout the video. So I called them up, enrolled, and just a few weeks later I was starting classes. So what was I expecting? What was different? Luckily, I had a little bit of insight going into it, and that's what I really want to share with you. Way back in 2012, right out of high school, I went to a trade school called the Motorcycle Mechanic Institute in Orlando, Florida, or MMI for short. I graduated as a certified Harley-Davidson technician and worked in the motorcycle industry for several years after. I won't go into why I got out of that field, but what I will say is that MMI was the kind of place that a lot of young kids went to because they thought it would be fun or easy and that they would graduate with a guaranteed job and be badass bikers making a lot of money. Problem was, most of those kids dropped out within 6 months. Why? They didn't want to put the work in. I'm not sure what fantasy they had in their heads, but I can tell you that with any trade or specialty school like Full Sail or MMI, you're only going to get out of it what you're willing to put into it. Ja feel?
I definitely feel.
I cannot stress that enough. If you think you're going to go to Full Sail for film or audio production or sports broadcasting and you can just f*** around the entire time, then I'm telling you now, don't waste your money. People get blinded by the lunchbox full of gear and think, oh man, with this gear, I'm gonna be the best immediately with no need to take my classes seriously because I'm a genius. Kanye reference. Just like at MMI, there are way too many people who enroll, realize it's hard, and quit. Or they bare minimum their way through to graduation, somehow thinking that Full Sail is supposed to magically get a job for them when they're done. Let me be perfectly clear. Full Sail will not get you a job. What they will do is help you refine your resume and give you tips and advice on landing jobs, as well as host some really great career fairs and networking events for you to go to if you can make it to campus. But you are still responsible for building a decent portfolio and pursuing opportunities on your own. And that's kind of the way it should be. If hearing that bums you out, then I would ask yourself if you really want the career you're going for or if you just like the idea of it. From here on out, I'm going to be speaking specifically about the DCBS program, as that was the program I graduated from, but I'm sure most of what I say is applicable to any degree program you might be considering. And just so I'm not keeping you in suspense, most of what I have to say about Full Sail is very positive. No, this video is not a secret psyop by Full Sail to get more students. I'm not sponsored or making this to shill for the school. I'll definitely get to the things I don't like, but if you are the kind of person serious about pursuing a career in the arts and maybe you need a guided hand, I highly encourage you to listen and see if Full Sail might be right for you. However, you may watch this and realize that this path is not the one for you. And I hope I'm able to help you find that out. So when you enroll at Full Sail, you're given information about your degree program as well as something called Project Launchbox. A lunchbox is a kit of professional gear with everything you need to complete your assignments and is one of the biggest draws of the school in general. Like I said, it's easy to be blinded by fancy and expensive gear, but it genuinely is a great part of the program and is incredibly well curated to fit your needs. For the DCBS program, when I started, we received a MacBook Pro, a Sony FX6 cinema camera with a 24-105 f4 G Master lens, a Manfrotto tripod, GVM 3-point light kit, various filmmaking accessories, as well as access to Adobe's full Creative Cloud of editing software. Do they still call it the Creative Cloud? Full Creative Suite? It doesn't matter. I got away from Adobe like halfway through school, whether it was free or not. DaVinci Resolve, baby! Now don't get me wrong, you are paying for this gear. It's included in your tuition. You don't just get it for free. But not only does that kind of make the tuition easier to stomach in my opinion, but you now have very high-end professional gear that is yours to keep after you graduate. I've invested a lot of my own money into film gear both before, during, and after my time at Full Sail, but the FX6 and much of the other gear I got from the Launchbox was a huge game changer for what I was able to accomplish once I had the skill and know-how. Keep in mind that the computer, camera, and gear that you get will change based on current technology as well as industry standards. I think not long before I started, it was the FS5 camera, and then it moved to the FX6, and who knows, maybe soon it'll be the FX3 or something newer. And remember, kids, the gear will in no way magically make you a great filmmaker or audio engineer or whatever you're going for if you don't take the time to learn the craft. But I'm also not going to pretend that it hasn't been a giant benefit to my work, so take that as you will. In the DCBS program, you receive your MacBook before class begins in order to get you started, but you won't receive the rest of your gear until month 8, I think. This is to give you time to acclimate to the classes, the workflow, and make sure you really want to be here and stick it out before all that money is spent on the rest of your lunchbox. I assume there are definitely some people who would enroll just to get an FX cinema camera on a payment plan, quote unquote, a payment plan, through student loans and then dip right after. And honestly, I couldn't blame them. I wanted to talk about this right away because it is by far the most frequent question I get, but let's put that aside for now and talk about classes. If you haven't been able to guess, the main theme of this video is you get out of it what you put into it. No one is going to hold your hand. No one is going to do the work for you. It is entirely on you to read the lessons, watch the lectures, and finish the assignments on time. Now, that's not to say there isn't plenty of help and support. Instructors are usually incredibly knowledgeable and give you several ways to interact with them. The classes are structured on a 4-week basis, a new class every month. Each class may operate slightly different, but for the most part, each week's info and assignments are unlocked every Monday, and you are left to your own pace to finish them by the posted due dates. You're very quickly encouraged to stay in touch with classmates and network with them as much as possible. And usually, anytime I've had questions or concerns, the instructors are responsive and eager to help. I can definitely tell you that you are much more likely to get the best help available if you show that you are truly giving your best and making a serious effort. You technically can pass each class and even graduate without really learning anything. That's called the bare minimum. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there were times where I was either burnt out or discouraged or depressed and really just barely squeaked by, and my work definitely reflected that. The entire point of these classes is to build up a super diverse and fleshed out creative portfolio so you can showcase your skills to future employers or clients and start really making money doing this full time, you know? Those people that I mentioned constantly complaining about Full Sail not handing them a job after graduation, those are bare minimum people. Your work speaks for itself. If you take your time in school seriously, you won't need anyone to hook you up. You'll get there on your own. I would also seriously recommend using your time learning on your own outside of your assignments. There's a lot of great info and tutorials on YouTube, and with tools like ChatGPT, it's easier than ever to fine-tune your understanding of things like writing, editing, and lighting. Classes will teach you the basics of editing and script writing, but they aren't going to make you an expert by any means, so it's definitely worth learning on your own as well. That was one of my big dislikes about the program. We would scratch the surface on technical things like coloring or sound design, but not really any deeper. At the same time, our degree was for cinematography itself, and those are peripheral skills, so again, spend your free time learning on your own. Some of the projects you might work on for your portfolio are things like short films, mini docs, and ad campaigns. I'll leave a link to my portfolio website below for all of you to check out so you can see what I was able to put together in school. But just a warning, my early short films are pretty unrefined, so go easy on me. And finally, the bad. Like I said, I really don't have a whole lot of negative things to say about my time in school, but there are some things I would either change or at least warn you of now. Most of the instructors are great. They're super helpful and intelligent, and it genuinely feels like they want you to succeed. However, there was one or two that really left a bad taste in my mouth. In particular, I had one instructor very late in my program who was incredibly condescending, a harsh and unreasonable grader, and would take off points for the absolute dumbest things that felt like personal preference more than actual technical skill. I think it's important to remember that you're a student, but it's also important to remember that you are paying upwards of 60 grand and deserve to be spoken to and instructed with respect. This guy was young and didn't have near the resume of the other instructors, and honestly, I think he just had something to prove. Enough said. The only other thing I had an issue with was that they were very clear from the beginning that even though this is online, you are held to the highest of standards alongside the campus students, and that working a full-time job or having kids was never an excuse for late assignments or for not being able to complete your tasks. I understood this 99% of the time, but when one instructor wouldn't answer my question because it was in the lecture recording and I had already watched that 2-hour lecture but didn't catch it because I was also doing my job, I was told to watch it again, and that my job was not an excuse. Again, I don't even totally disagree, but that just felt like being douchey for the sake of being douchey. And yes, this was the exact same guy I was just talking about a minute ago. I really didn't like that guy. Okay, this video is long enough, so I'm going to end it here. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and maybe I'll make a part 2 or a Q&A video to address them if there are a lot. If you made it this far, thank you for listening, and good luck on chasing your dreams. I hope we're able to work together someday. Please consider liking and subscribing to help me achieve my goal of becoming the next water hashira. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. My biggest problem right now is that I really like to talk with my hands, and the way that the mic is kind of settled, I'll smack the mic every time I try to talk with my hands, and I don't like it.